Thank you. Okay, go on, man.
All right. Thank you. Hello, guys, and welcome to this other panel, which is one of the last panels, or let me not say one of the last panel before we get into the real crook of the matter, which is going to be taking place tomorrow in Douala, Cameroon. So we started this, we've been running this program. This is about the 21st or 22nd workshop we are having. We've been having workshops spanning from one angle to another. I believe if you had no idea about cybersecurity and you started with this program the day we started, you should have learned a lot. And the good thing is every session is being recorded, and also we have slides for everything that's going on. So today I have a very rich panel. I mean, when I hear about the experiences, I hear about what the guys have been doing, it's so amazing. And it's an honor for me to moderate great people like this. And today we're going to be talking about something very, very peculiar, something most of us just hear about, but we don't know how to go about it. We hear about security every day. We hear about cybersecurity. We hear about physical security and so on. So today we are going to be talking about one particular aspect about how to protect your IT infrastructure and feel secure. So this question or this topic has two sides. Like how to protect your IT infrastructure is one thing, and feeling secure is another thing. Protecting could be good, and feeling secure is another thing. So we've had different introductions already, or if while Mr. Audrey was introducing you, he didn't say something you would like us to know about yourself, you are going to tell us. So right now, I'm going to be starting with Mr. Echu, Maurice. So when they talk about an IT, I guess smiling. So we talk about an IT infrastructure. What are we talking about when we say IT infrastructure? It's actually very huge or big. So in your words, how do you define that?
Thank you, Tata. Thank you to everyone that is taking part to this conference. And I am really excited, to share the panel with you guys. And I think this is an opportunity, to share our experiences and also learn from others as we go around. So thank you, Tata, once more. And yeah, when it comes to IT infrastructure, basically broadly, it can be defined as, a set of components in an information technology within an organization. So basically, anything that enters within information technology, it could be hardware, it could be software, it could be database, anything else is considered as the whole is considered as IT infrastructure within an organization. So basically, that's a basic definition, to go step by step, on a low key for everyone to understand what it means. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That was actually accurate and very fluent. So I don't know if Enoch has something to add to that definition, or maybe has another view of what an IT infrastructure is.
Well, thank you very much, Derek, for the opportunity to add or share more light. Our brother spoke very well, and then I think he's spoken it all, but I think I have to add one or two. Actually, the infrastructure also looks at both the soft skills and the softwares. Most often than not, when IT infrastructure comes in, most of the times, IT managers or other people think that it is only the hardware devices or the network diagrams. No, we are talking about both the soft skills, the people that are manning the technology, and then the tools that is being used to manage the technology as well. So that is a little I can add to that. Yes.
Wow. The tools that are being used to manage infrastructure, this particular one hits me very hard. Yeah, the tools, very, very important. I think we are going to be coming up to that. So I really want to talk to all our viewers on the different social media platforms, because you are sharing across different social media platforms. So if you have any question, you can always write it in the chat box, or just notice somewhere at the end of the panel discussion. our panelists are going to attempt to answer your question. So I'm going to be going straight to Mr. Nathaniel Nguemeta, someone I respect a lot. That's someone with a very huge background, 20 years of IT experience. That's much. I don't know. I don't know where I was 20 years ago. So, Mr. Nathaniel, when you talk about IT infrastructure, do you have another view, or Maurice and Enoch have said everything already? Or do you have any other thing to add to that? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity, first of all, to be on the panel today. And I'm very happy to be on the panel with great minds like Mr. Maurice and Mr. Enoch. And I am also happy many people are interested in the topic today. Going straight to the first question, I would say my co-panelists have touched a greater part. However, today, when we look at IT infrastructure, there's one key aspect many people do not realize is already part of our IT infrastructure, which is the cloud. I would say many people today, individually or as an enterprise, use, let me say, Microsoft 365, and they don't realize they're already using the cloud. So our IT infrastructure, in a nutshell, would be any component, any item, or any device that assists in the treating, transmitting, or storing our information within the boundaries of our enterprise. That would be anything from a handheld device to a cable, or like Mr. Enoch said, the people handling or treating the information as well. So it goes way beyond what we would imagine within the cloud or within the physical infrastructure that we host in-house.
Wow, wisdom. All right, so we actually see here that Maurice, Enoch, and Nathaniel brought up, or they came up from different angles that complemented each other. Was as usual, learning, and this is actually awesome. So we are going to be going to another question. I wanted us to talk about some particular things, IT infrastructure, and the other one is going to be why should you protect your IT infrastructure, then protect your IT infrastructure. So this time around, I'm going to be starting with, don't you just leave it like that? Hello, can you guys hear me? Oh, I have some network lag.
I can hear
Yes,
you.
the network.
Yes, there is a little bit of network lag.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yes.
sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Much better than before.
It's getting fluent now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. It's actually raining outside. I think that has to do with the network. So my question, I'm going to bring it up again. What I was asking is, why should we protect our IT infrastructure? And how should we protect our IT infrastructure? I said Enoch is going to start with this one, like why should we protect it? And we're going to be chaining it down with how it should be protected. Okay, Enoch, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to throw more light on why we should protect our infrastructure. Our infrastructure holds critical data. Now we are in the bionic stage where data is the new gold. So if you have an infrastructure, like I mentioned, tools, people, network devices, architecture, cloud system, that is hosting critical data, you need to actually make sure that a lot of security protocols are put in place there so that the data being held there is secured. Because in an event of a breach, whoever owns the data would face the law, like what Uber issue, the incident that happened with Uber. The law enforcement are very critical now. They are actually on the high alert of watching and observing. So once you have the responsibility of hosting data, having data, the onus lies on you to secure it. Then again, I will throw a little more light. If you are going to contract the service of a vendor, you need to clearly understand what responsibility lies on you in terms of a breach. Check your SOC 2 report and all that. Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, that's it.
Wow. The data owner is always going to be responsible.
Yes.
That's a powerful one. Thank you. I don't know if Nathaniel will have something to add to that. Like why should we protect our IT infrastructure?
Yes. So basically, the IT infrastructure is what supports the business. So if you have something that supports you, you need to protect it to make sure that it's supporting you. Now, if we go into the three cardinals of information security, which is the confidentiality, the availability, and the integrity of the data, protecting our IT infrastructure means making sure that these three cardinals provide the intended purpose for which they are providing. Now, adding on to what Mr. Enoch just said, aside from the legal aspect, we have a business to run. And this IT infrastructure is what supports our business. Now, we may not only be looking at a breach, we can also be looking at a failure of the infrastructure itself. And if the infrastructure fails to provide the services for which they are being put in place, then we're not actually meeting our business intentions properly. So our service will degrade or stop. Our SLAs will not be met, and there are other aspects. There are quantitative aspects as well as there are qualitative aspects. Our customers will lose trust in us if every day they come to our company and the front desk machine does not provide the service that we're expecting to get. So protecting our infrastructure is very important because this is an investment we make. We need this investment to meet the purpose for which they were made.
Wow, thank you very much. Mr. Echu, Maurice, any other thing you would like to add?
Well, basically, Nathaniel and Enoch have said, but I just want to add something to that. Before starting to think what we have, why should we protect something? Is because we feel like the thing we want to protect has value to us. And it is the value of that asset that is going to push us to take all the measures or to start thinking if we need to protect it or not. So basically, before starting to think why to protect something, I need to know what I have. What do I have in my infrastructure that I think that if it is touched, it's going to affect my business, it's going to affect my well-being, it's going to affect my morals, it's going to affect anything within me or within my organization. So I think I protect my organization because I think that the asset within my organization is what consists of the most important thing that my organization depends on. And if that thing is touched, then the organization closes the door or is going to really affect the organization. That's why I think of protecting my organization or protecting the asset from unauthorized access or from any form of unauthorized manipulation of the asset. So I don't want to go back on what Nathaniel said already. So I just wanted to add this little information on it. So I need to know what I am protecting. What am I protecting first? So I'll go around and see what is critical. What are the critical assets of my organization? And then now I can think of starting protecting them.
Wow, thank you very much. You can only protect what you know.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you have, protecting it is like you don't know what you're trying to protect and so on. So now we've been hearing about protecting, and I'm glad Maurice mentioned from unauthorized access, which is something very important. When they talk about unauthorized access, they're not just talking about the hackers. Even those within may not have some particular privileges to access some particular services. Even those ones, I guess the infrastructure could equally be protected from those particular ones, depending on the level of your privilege. So now we've been hearing about protect. So ProProtect is here actually. So what do you, or how do you protect it, Mr. Nathaniel? How do you actually protect these things? You mentioned handheld devices. You mentioned a lot of different stuff to be protected. Some mentioned the cloud and so on. So how do you actually protect your infrastructure? How do you do that?
The first thing, I'll come back to what Maurice just mentioned a few moments ago. The first thing is to know what you're protecting. If you don't know what you're protecting, then you won't be protecting the correct thing. Now, the second aspect is to know why you're protecting what you're protecting. Because not all assets have the same value, and some assets probably don't need protection. So you need to know why you're protecting, and this goes in line with the value that the asset has. So the first aspect is to identify what you need to protect. Second aspect is to identify the value of what you need to protect. Now that you can have both, you can be able to determine what type of control to put in place to protect it. The reason you need the first two is because the third aspect, the control, should be commensurate to the first two. You cannot be implementing a huge control of a high value to an asset that has a low value. That will not be appropriate. Now, there are two aspects. You know quite well that protecting an IT infrastructure is a huge topic, but I will try to summarize them under two key aspects that will guide us on what to look at. The first is what we call zero trust. With zero trust, the idea is that I don't trust anybody. It means even the person I grant access to my IT infrastructure, I do not trust, which leads to what we call least privilege. So when granting access to the infrastructure, we need to make sure that the people we are granting access to have the least privilege possible. We can only add the privileges when and if they become necessary. The second aspect with a zero trust environment is checking. Even if we grant the access, we need to check constantly because protecting our environment is a continuous issue. It's the same like having a guard, a security guard at the door. Having a security guard at the door doesn't guarantee protection. You need to make sure that the security guard is awake and is following instructions. So we need to check, monitor how the people are using the infrastructure. Now, the second category I will bring up is what we call defense in depth. Defense in depth is a concept of putting layers of security or layers of controls on controls to make sure that nothing is actually left out. True, security can never be 100% perfect. But if we have a layer of control that is controlling another layer of control, it gives us an added assurance that if the first control fails, the second control takes in place. a simple aspect, a simple example would be to use a UPS in an IT infrastructure that has a generator. So if our data center has a power failure, the UPS can provide for a continuity of power or power supply before the generator takes off. This helps to give an added layer of control so that the appliances do not lose power, we don't lose availability, the appliances don't get burned in case of excess voltage and things like that. So we need to look at several layers of control that can help us protect the infrastructure in a way that one failure can be compensated for by another layer of control. So this is what we call defense in depth. So as a whole, the key to have a high level of assurance lies in these two.
Wow, this was a powerful one, Mr. Maurice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually, I felt like I was already in a class preparing for my PhD thesis. I mean, that was 20 years of experience talking, actually. So I don't know if Enoch will have something to add to that, like how do you protect your IT infrastructure? He gave us a lecture, a very good one. So I don't know if you have any other thing to complement, actually.
Okay, so by way of complementing what our brother just said, Nathaniel, before you even start protecting any infrastructure, you need to do your risk assessment. That will tell you the area of concerns. I always, by way of consultation, I always tell my clients that if a new CISO or head of IT enters an environment as an employee, he needs to walk straight to the account department and ask which unit generates higher revenue to the company, because that is going to give you an idea where your focus will be. That doesn't mean you wouldn't protect other units, but you would focus more on areas that bring in more. Saying that with your risk assessment, you can be able to identify your vulnerabilities therein, and then weigh it and know if this vulnerability or this weakness needs a control or a mitigation to reduce it or transfer it or avoid it. The risk assessment will tell you. After that, you need to be able to have visibility, because you cannot protect what you do not see. If you are protecting something, you need to be able to see it. You put by way of having a monitoring system, the SOC will do that with the SIM. There are a lot of SIMs on the market. A lot of vendors are doing well with their SIM. Microsoft Sentinel, not to advertise any brand, but there are good brands on the market. You need to have what you call the CDP, that's continuous data protection. Continuous data protection. Most companies now are going for DRAAS, that's disaster recovery as a service. If you realize that it's more beneficial to transfer or hire a cloud service agent that can provide you with continuity, then you would have to look at that, so that your MTP, that's mean time to recover, and then when there's a breach, you can be able to harness critical information, and you also be able to serve customers with continuity. Like Nathaniel said, aside breach, you are also looking at continuity of business, because if your clients are coming to you and always you have glitches on the network or the system or the service delivery, they are not going to look at the next competitor. So there are a lot, like he said, but then summarily, these are things I would add to what both of them have said, Nathaniel and Eugene. Derek, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I had to disappear due to situations beyond my control, but at least I'm glad I'm back. So, all right. So, Maurice had not yet said anything about that, but Maurice, you're going to be going to another aspect. You're not going to be saying on the how. I mean, these guys have actually confused my brain so far, but actually I'm actually learning a lot from this, and I guess everyone is doing so. So now, what do you actually protect when they talk about IT infrastructure? What is it that you protect? Is it the router? Is it are they the switches, the servers? Are they the people? Or are they the tools or the applications running on them? So when they say protecting the IT infrastructure, what do you actually protect, Maurice?
I think in my second intervention, I said we protect what has value to the organization. It could be people.
Oh, yeah.
It could be the technology. It could be the data itself. But in all of these, protection and safety of human being comes first in all of this. So human being still remain one of the most important and the critical part to ensure the safety, that we ensuring safety, because the technology or whatever is protected by human being. Human being are the one protecting the asset, the data, or whatever within the organization. So their safety is also important. Now, to come back to your question, what is valuable to the organization? What is critical to the organization? Obviously, the organization has an investment. They have invested a lot. They have customers. They have all these different types of assets that they have to protect. Otherwise, failure to do that, they will have to face law. They will have to face bankruptcy. They will have to face different types of events that may happen if one of these critical business function is being touched or affected. So how to protect the IT infrastructure, or what to protect? We protect data, we protect the IT, we protect the people. Now, to protect them, there are multiple, or there are different types of security control mechanism that you can implement in the infrastructure or within the organization, to protect the different category of asset that you have, because we have to categorize the assets we have. After identifying them, like Enoch said today, we have to identify, and then we have to categorize them. We categorize them based on the value that they have to the organization. So we have to implement controls, to protect the people, to protect the technology, to protect the data. So that comes to what ISO 27000 is recommending us, by mentioning or by citing a set of control mechanism that should be implemented based on the category of asset that we have within our organization. So that is how we can protect our data, we can protect our technology, we can protect our people.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Maurice. So if I understood well what you all said, Enoch too, like what is protected more is what generates more for the company. For instance, it's not like the other aspects should be neglected, but there should be a hierarchy of what is protected or what should we focus on first before the other things.
What has most value to the organization?
All right. What has most value? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So now we keep hearing protect again and again. So who is in charge of protecting the IT infrastructure? Who is actually in charge? I'm going to be starting with Enoch again this time around. So who's in charge of protecting the IT infrastructure?
Okay, thank you very much. Security or protection is the collective responsibility. It is not one man's business. But then when you pick in terms of governance of IT, it lies on senior management to protect and safeguard the organization. That trickles down to the CISO as well, who manages day-to-day operations of security in the enterprise. But I say, security is a personal thing. Security is a personal thing. And the weakest link to any organization is the human factor. Okay, so if you are having a staff, which I normally refer to as internal customers, you need to be able to give them the needed training to be able to be security aware, which I normally call the cyber security hygiene. You need to make sure that they are hygienic in basic cyber security. I mentioned the HR team, the marketing team, even the core IT team that are working on the system. Not all of them are security, have the security knowledge and skill. Then we are talking about external customer, because then if, let's say, for example, you have a bank or you have an institution, you deal with customers. If a phishing mail is sent to a customer and he clicks on it and links to his bank account, a lateral movement can happen on the network or the infrastructure we are discussing now, and the whole infrastructure can come down in a matter of months. So we need to focus on the human factor. Of course, like Maurice said, the human factor in the hierarchy of value is high, and we've always focused on the human factor. Then we come to the infrastructure itself. What protocols are we putting in place? Technically, we demilitarize our internet-facing applications. Okay, we put our routers and switches well placed. We as the rules on it are well secured and well unified. Then we trickle down to the security operation as a day-to-day running of security. Do we do our monitoring very well? Do we provide our balance scorecard on assets or servers across the group that need to be decommissioned? Do you have visibility on servers and endpoints? AV have the latest data? All these things have to come in place. So it's quite huge, but I will leave it for the rest of the panel to also add more to it. Yes.
Well, actually quite huge. Nathaniel, anything to add?
Exactly. There's always a lot to add.
Yeah, sure.
It's a huge one.
Yeah.
Now, I will be a little bit more, I would say, restrained when it comes to who is in charge. Because at this point, governance needs to establish what we would call a RACI chart, R-A-C-I. In the RACI chart, we need to know who is responsible for the asset, who is accountable for the asset, who should be consulted, and who should be informed. Now, when we talk of a RACI chart in the protection of an IT infrastructure, this brings us to the fact that the person who owns the infrastructure should have the ultimate responsibility to protect the asset. Now, the person who owns may not be the person keeping the asset. The person who owns, for example, would be the head of department, but the person keeping would be the administrator who configures the various controls that are put in place in order to protect the IT infrastructure. And the people who have the overall accountability would be either the board of directors, or the overall accountability lies on the shoulder of the CEO, who responds in case of any issues with the infrastructure not delivering. Now it trickles down, like Enoch said, it trickles down. It would go layer by layer, from the CEO down to the CIO, to the CISO, to the various department heads, to the various systems admins, or the people who have been attributed the right to configure the protection mechanism that are put in place. So at every level, each one has the responsibility to protect the infrastructure, and this doesn't leave the users out. He said it is a joint responsibility. So everybody, from the people commissioning the asset into operation to the people using the asset, everybody has a responsibility at their own level to protect the infrastructure from compromise.
Well, all right. From the view of things, it's everyone's business. It's not just for some particular people. That's awesome. So Maurice, I see Maurice nodding. Any other thing you would like to add?
Well, at this point, Enoch and Nathaniel have already touched the main point. Security is everyone's responsibility. So I don't want to go, I don't want to say, go into details again. They have said it all. So if we want our organization to be safe or to stay protected, then everyone at each level should implicate itself, or should consider himself or as responsible to the organization, to the protection as well. So one thing I wanted to say also is that when we're talking about who is responsible, so everyone is responsible. The individual or the end user is responsible. The administrators are responsible. The leadership is responsible. So now, one thing I would like us, maybe if possible, is for people that are listening to us is, say that this individual is responsible of this or of that. The leadership is there to impose, a certain number of rules, a certain number of, policies that should be applied all throughout the organization. That is some of its responsibilities. And I think it is really crucial, to say it out loud, because sometimes when we just say it's the responsibility of everyone, but I would say, but how am I responsible? What should I do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because for people that are listening to us all through the social media platform, it's good that we express or we say some of these responsibilities so that they will understand that at this point, this is what is expected of me. This is what I can do, to partake or to participate in the protection of the organization, not only the IT infrastructure, but the organization as a whole.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, security is everyone's business. Like you always say, you won't sleep with your door open in your house. You won't sleep with your door open. So, I mean, why are you going to sleep with your phones open or your IT infrastructure open without any particular security measure? So I'm going to be coming back to Maurice. So my question, I feel like it has been answered. The question I was about to ask you, what is the most important asset in a company that has to be protected? But I feel like every company has its own asset that looks responsible or more important to them. But I don't know if anyone has any contrary view to that. Like, what is the most important asset in a company for it to be protected? Have you touched that, or do you feel you want to say something about it? Anyone could take the floor. Oh, Maurice. I'll start with Maurice, actually.
Okay. Maybe I said it. I said this already.
Okay.
I said people remain the most important asset within the organization. Their protection is critical. Their protection is critical because without people, you won't be able to make the income you're making. Without people, we cannot implement all the security mechanism we are talking about, we have been citing all along. So people, the security and the protection of people remains the most important aspect of any organization. I don't want to go further more. That's all I can say.
Thank you. So the people, from the view of things, is the greatest attack surface. Enoch, anything? What's the most important asset to be protected? Are you in the same line with Maurice, talking about the people too, or you have any other thing you wanted to actually hit?
I think all of us have mentioned it by way of discussion, but then I think I will touch in one of them. The people remains key, as we have all mentioned. Your data you are handling, the infrastructure, the people, you have to also look at the internal and external customers. Of course, as a business, you are looking at the people you are working with as your staff, and you're looking at the people that patronizes your service. because I mean, each way attack can come through, that attack vectors are now becoming more sophisticated. So they can permeate through each of the facets you are looking at. So your infrastructure, your people, your data, very critical. Very critical.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are centered around the people, not the processes, not the technology, mostly the people. Okay, that's a good one. Nathaniel, I won't ask you the same question. Your own question is going to be different. That has to do with a case study, actually. So this particular case study is a real scenario. What happened is these people had an application or an app running on Windows 7. And this app, the way it was built, it can't run on Windows 10. And this app is the most productive app in this company. Like, it's the one that generates a lot of money. Build the app is nowhere to be found, and there is actually no way for an upgrade. So we went there, spoke, and they're like, no, we can't put it on Windows 10. And we all know that Windows 7 has been discontinued. I mean, there's no more a patch, no longer any patch for Windows 7. So if you are faced with this kind of scenario in an infrastructure that generates millions, and the app they're using is running on Windows 7, the fear to bring it to Windows 10 may make the app to crash or not to function properly. Nathaniel, how do you attack or how do you conquer this kind of problem if you are faced with one?
Thank you for pointing that out. That's actually a very common issue, especially with OT environments. I noticed that on some projects I've worked on recently. Now, in security and control management, this is an aspect where you need to think of what we call compensating controls. Now, compensating controls are controls that are put in place to respond to the lack of availability or direct resolution or remediation of a particular case. Compensating controls are actually not entirely advised, but in such cases, they're inevitable. They're inevitable because the application itself is very useful, it's in production, it is working, and it is just the risk of the platform on which it is running that generates the need for a compensating control. What the company and the people trying to implement a control would look at would be first, how to put barriers between the system and the threat factors and threat actors. These barriers can come in place like a DMZ. It can be a double system that is hosting the main production system that is carrying the application, kind of what we would call containerization. So there are several ways to come around it. The first definitely would be to implement an immediate compensating control for the various weaknesses that Windows 7 would have. The second, remember I mentioned a case of defense in depth, would be to fine-tune the firewalls that are connecting to the system. Obviously, firewalls comes in a case of a DMZ. So putting these systems behind a demilitarized zone and then implementing firewall rules that will control the communication between the outside environment and the environment where that application sits. Third would be to put in place monitoring mechanisms that will make sure that any attempt to exploit the vulnerabilities or weaknesses that exist in Windows 7 and the technology on which the application runs can be caught up with time and remediated or prevented ahead of time so that we should not have an incident, which would increase the risk, of course. But the ultimate would be to use a practical mechanism to get to probably reverse engineer the application and try to look for a solution a definite solution on how to migrate this system to a supported operating system. This is because we cannot count on compensating controls for a very long time. Compensating controls become more expensive over time because you need to keep these controls running in order to keep maintaining the security to that application. So the ultimate goal should be to use the compensating controls for a short period of time, or as long as you may take, to do a research that will bring the application up to speed, or probably decommission it and replace it with another one.
Nathaniel. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. All right. Maurice, I don't know that in that particular case, in that particular scenario, if you are faced with that, you are on the field, what will you tell them, or how are you going to manage that kind of situation?
Basically, this is what we call we usually call it legacy system. So which is, we have a system that was deployed years back, and then now we don't have updates, or the company that developed the software is no longer producing update, or maybe the company closed, but the business is running on that application, and then they are making, so I will talk about it in a different point of view. Nathaniel has said already some of the things, so I'll talk about risk. When we have that kind of system, it comes to the organization. The ultimate decision comes to the organization to decide how to deal, because that poses a risk to the organization. So the organization has to decide now, how do we go about it? And Nathaniel has mentioned some of these things. But now, in terms of risk treatment, we know that this poses a risk in the organization. How do we treat this risk? So in most cases, they will go for a risk acceptance. They will accept the risk because they cannot stop using the software or the system, because that is maybe 50 or 100% of the business relies on that system. So they cannot afford, because there is no other solution somewhere that is gonna, provide them what they really need. So they will accept the risk and then look for compensation, control mechanism to put in place, as Nathaniel said already. So they will not just throw everything away; they will keep it, but look for intermediary solution, to protect it, and all the mechanisms around that they could use to keep it safe from external attack.
Okay, thank you. Risk acceptance. You accept the risk. Underlined. All right. So, like you all know, for viewers on all different social media platforms, we are running on about 5 different media platforms. So, if you have any question that pops up whenever any of our panelists is talking, you can just write it down into the chat box. They will address it later on. So, Enoch, have you been faced with this kind of situation before, or if you're faced with this, how do you handle it?
Thank you very much, Tata, for the opportunity to throw more light on the case study at hand. I usually face that a lot in my day-to-day consulting assignments. You see, before you even touch the system to apply any control, you have to do your full risk assessment. Okay, you have to be able to identify the risk. Okay, is this in an event where there's a breach, or in an event where there's a service disruption? Is it a risk that the business can accept? If yes, okay, then we are running with it. If no, then we are looking at controls that could, like Nathaniel rightly mentioned, and then Maurice said, compensating controls. But again, even before you choose a particular compensating control, you should also assess it. Because a compensating control that is even more expensive, or even get expensive as you keep applying, would not even suffice it's better leaving the legacy system to run, because you are applying controls and it keeps getting more expensive. You're applying technology, it keeps getting expensive. So you sit down together with the business and the chief risk officer in the company, with the CISO and the application owner. You decide, okay, there's no patch to this. Microsoft have stopped supporting Windows 7. What do we do? Are we going to reverse engineer, try to migrate this on a different OS? That should be the way forward if we look at it and realize that compensating controls are becoming too expensive and our risk attack surface beginning to widen. Yep. You don't need to go through that tangent. Sit with management, the application owner, and then the CISO and the risk champion and management. You look at how you can migrate this legacy system onto a more supportive OS. That we don't have to worry about the fear factor of we being breached or the fear factor of service disruption. So you need to, in summary, you need to do that. Then we come to the technicalities. Yeah, that I think Nathaniel Maurice has mentioned that. Looking at the time, I don't want to go into the technicalities more. So basically, before you even apply the technicalities, you need to go through this first to know what you are dealing with before you can touch it going forward. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So there is this second case. Thank you very much. A lot has been said. The second case is this company or this firm want to deploy good security, but they do not have it's a low budget kind of firm. I heard Enoch mention about the financial aspect of it, which is becoming expensive. And now Nathaniel earlier mentioned to maybe a firewall and all of that. You want to do load balancing, you want to do everything. You want to actually be top notch when it comes to security, but you do not have the budget. How do you go about it? Do you stay vulnerable or what do you get first? I will continue with you, Enoch, first.
Okay, thank you very much once again for the opportunity. You need to look at your security policy. Okay. Because most of the time, the content of your security policy is actually making you spend more. You review it and then add or subtract protocols or procedures. That is pushing you to invest in more sophisticated but needless technology and then tools. So the policy is key. At this point, you cannot go without a policy. Review it and come to a conclusion. You need to review your service offering and your business offering as well, because there are some service offering that you are providing that is making you spend more. It would have been even better outsourcing it. Okay, so if you have an in-house data center, you probably have to look at doing a cloud service. Would that be secure? Would that be less expensive? Because you are running on a low budget. You have a security operations team. You look at it, you do a risk assessment, you realize that, okay, you do a costing, realize that it's better to outsource this as a service than to run it in-house. So two things I've mentioned. Review your policy. You have to check whether you have to outsource. You have to leverage on internal knowledge and open source knowledge. What do I mean by that? In this internet age, if you are going to invest in people by way of training and awareness, and you are going to use a more vendor base, you are going to spend more. Like I just wrote CISA. CISA costs a lot when you convert it to Ghana cedi. It's quite a lot of money. The dollar is 15.70 here in Ghana now, so it's quite huge. So if you are pushing, you have 50. You have to invest 50 people for a training per session per quarter. It's expensive. So leverage on public knowledge, leverage on already crafted resource that can actually help you get into breaking through in your finance. No, don't invest in security as a fancy. In my way of consulting day to day, I see most organizations, because of regulation, they invest in fanciful security protocols. When I say fanciful, they want to show all the blanks in terms of security, so that regulators will know that they have got it all. But trust me, you having that fanciful next gen security protocol or device doesn't guarantee that you are secured. No, not at all. Not at all. you need, it's sometimes it's better off using your old device or your old protocols, review them, fine-tune them, reconfigure them to be able to solve the technical and the non-technical needs, so that even in an event where an attacker gets into your infrastructure, like I keep saying, they can be delayed, they can be frustrated, and they can easily be detected, even with your old technology, with the latest patch and with the latest support. So there are more. I will be fair and leave it the rest to my panel to continue. I don't want to exhaust it.
Exactly. You see, this panel had to. In fact, this is a program that should run for like a week. This particular topic, because it's pregnant with a lot of things.
Yeah.
We can't finish it in the session. So I don't know, Mr. Nathaniel, low budget firm, they want good security. What's your advice to them?
This is a very technical question because of three aspects. The first is the firm needs to identify what they need to protect in the security. So what's their business? What's the criticality of their business? Because there are some businesses that cannot run on low budget security. Let's be very honest. You need to be realistic.
Yep.
This goes in line with what Maurice mentioned earlier, using the proper risk treatment. If accepting the risk without implementing necessary controls will be more expensive, then expenditure is inevitable. Security is a more of a realistic issue than a dream. So first of all, we need to understand what is critical for the business. And this will help to determine the kind of risk treatment that the business will need to put in place. The other two aspects are tricky. The second one is about good security. What will the enterprise define as good security? Because good security is relative. It could be very good for one company of the same business field, but not good for the other company. And the big difference would be the kind of assets that you put in place and the people, like Enoch just said. Third thing would be how low, what do they call low budget? Because low budget is also relative, because the low budget should be in comparison to what security it has to protect. If it is low and provides low security, then it's as good as not implementing security at all. If it is low, yet we're looking at spending a lot on what my friend Enoch called fanciful security devices.
Yeah.
It's a good term, but this is actually the reality. So firms need to be realistic. The first thing we need to do is establish a risk register. The risk register is what really helps to guide on how to invest on security, the kind of decisions we need to make on security. The second aspect is to identify several alternatives to the controls that need to be put in place. So the risk register covers everything, including the risk treatment plan. But now in the risk treatment plan, identify alternatives. We do not need to go for the big names, but we can even go for open source. Mind you, I will take a simple example of a SIEM. Many people, many companies I've come across invest in the big names. Meanwhile, on the market, we have more than 20 open source SIEMs that can be used. What's a SIEM? I'll just be a little bit explicit, because we may have people who are not very technical in the security. A SIEM is what we call a security incident and event management. A SIEM helps to capture events that may help to indicate the presence of a risk or an incident within the environment. As people carry out different activities, it helps to capture them, and security analysts go through the SIEM to be able to make timely decisions on events that appear within the environment. SIEMs are very expensive. But if you need a SIEM to manage your business and you don't have the budget, you can go for open source. You can also outsource some activities, like Enoch said, by using on-demand consultancy. You don't need to have a whole staff. Today, we have the possibility of a concept, what we call a virtual CISO. You may not need to have a CISO on board, but you sign a partnership or an agreement with a firm who that has consultants in-house that can act as CISOs on demand. Their fees are spontaneous and they do not bring an overhead. So there are several ways that we can use to cut down the cost, but we need to be realistic. We do not need to be wishful or dreaming.
Wow. Thank you for that, Maurice.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Enoch
to this low budget guy that wants top-notch security?
Enoch has mentioned outsourcing, and Nathaniel has mentioned that also. They also mentioned policies, review policies. And I would just add this little part of it that I think is also important that people understand, because we're talking about the organization here. So the organization has to review its business objectives. We have business objectives, and then business needs, and then that leads to what we call business analysis. There should be an analysis done. We need a security control in place. Do we really need this security control in place? What do we have in place? And do we really need this firewall of this kind of amount? Because vendors out there, they sell products and they tell you this is the next generation. But when you look at your environment, do you really need that firewall, that particular firewall that they are selling? So I think a business analysis has to be run within the organization. Review the policies, review business needs, and then review business objectives. Not to go back to what Enoch and Nathaniel has said. I think organizations should review their business needs and review their business objectives so that they will be able, to have a budget, a system in place that match their budget.
Well, have a system in place that matches their budget. Thank you very much for this witty and thoughtful response from you. So here again, I would just have to say we are at EOCON conference. We are at 24 hours, or let me say at the eve of the biggest events, the biggest cybersecurity events happening in Cameroon every year in the month of October, which is observed as the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So tomorrow we are going to be having everyone, how do I put this? Tomorrow is actually going to be a very big day. We're going to be, for everyone in Cameroon or those in Douala, we're going to be at Onomo Hotel as from 8 a.m. It's a free and open event to all. And it's very, very, very important you attend this. It's for everyone, not just for security practitioners, and everyone. So before we actually come to our conclusion, we have and go to our questions, because there's some questions waiting for you guys. Guys are actually bombarding you with a lot of questions. So for like the close-up, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, how do you make sure the IT infrastructure is well protected and it stays protected? How do you test that protection? How do you know it's even protected? And above all, stays protected? I will start with Maurice, please.
Security or safety it's a thing of the mindset. It's how you feel. If you feel that everything you've put in place makes you feel safe, because there is no 100% security as Nathaniel said earlier. But the fact that you feel safe, it means you've put in place a certain number of controls around you that makes you feel that you are safe or you have a certain level of security. So also another thing, some key points I would say, we need to make sure how to make sure that we are well protected. First, we have to foster a culture of security or cybersecurity within our organization, because here it's all about individual human beings. So we have to put, to leverage this culture of people being aware of the fact that there is someone out there, that will always try, to get in or try to have access to something that doesn't belong to them, that is protected. And secondly, I would say we need to implement a cyber hygiene within our organization. Cyber hygiene is really important. And when we talk of cyber hygiene, then I will mention maybe the technology part, maybe antivirus, uh, firewalls, create trust zones, and so on and so on. Multi-factor authentication that we talk a lot these days is also something we need to, implement within the organization. And then the third thing is, I would say, organizations have to invest, in the digital and the physical security, because it's really important. And the last point I would say is communication. Communication is key point between teams. If you have something, or if you have a policy that is not well communicated within your organization or within the teams, that also becomes a risk to your organization. So communication is really important. So if I have to repeat myself, foster a culture of cybersecurity or security within your organization. Secondly, implement a cyber hygiene environment. Thirdly, you have to invest in digital and physical security. And lastly, communication. Put more effort in communication.
All right. Thank you very much. If there is a take home from what Maurice gave, the four things, talking about the culture, talking about the cyber hygiene, physical and the digital security, and communication, which is very important. All right. So, yeah, Nathaniel, how do you make sure your IT infrastructure is protected and it stays protected?
Okay. For the sake of time, I will just raise two key aspects.
Okay.
The first is to test continuously. You need to test the controls that have been put in place. You can do so first if, for example, you used security awareness training as a control to train your staff. You can test by running campaigns, security awareness campaigns, that will be able to test whether your staff understood the training that you already dispensed. An example of the campaign will be a phishing campaign. If you run a phishing campaign, you can be able to test whether it's going through, whether the message is going through. The second aspect would be to monitor, because even when you test, your test is only as valid as the period of time that you tested. But security is very dynamic. That's one thing. Security is very dynamic. Something that works now may not be working in the next few minutes. So you need to monitor to make sure that the controls that have been put in place are delivering as expected. Of course, you should have metrics in place like KPIs, like KRIs, key performance indicators, key risk indicators. You should have targets. If you are outsourcing, you should have SLAs in place. You need to put monitoring to make sure that all of this delivers as expected. Of course, we all know it can't be 100%, but ensuring that the controls are active and present already makes you sure that what you have put in place can let you move on to other things and implementing other controls and ensuring that they're working as well. So it keeps you on your toes, of course.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. All right, Enoch, you will drink water for now. You will not talk for now. So let's go to the questions, because you're trying to manage some time here. So we are going to be going to the questions first before we take my last question that is going to be form of a conclusion. So the first question we have is from Seba Ruth. Ruth is asking, is there a difference between defense in depth and zero trust? Anyone can take the floor.
I can take that up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, there is a difference. There is a huge difference between defense in depth. Let me describe. Defense in depth is putting in place several layers of security, one on the other, to make sure that security does not fail and leave you in the blue. So a defense in depth mechanism means even if you have a security in place, I use the example of, let me categorize it, of business continuity. I have a data center that carries hosts servers, and these servers are powered by my normal electricity line. This electricity line can fail at any time. So I decide to put a generator. However, the generator sometimes will fail to take off automatically or may lag like 2 to 3 seconds before it takes off. And this may cause my servers to restart. So if my business requires that my servers never go on, I need a third layer of security. I need something that will phase between the time the power goes off and the time the generator comes on. And the best response would be a UPS. So this is defense. This is defense on defense. It's separate controls. Some people can just stick to generators. It's a proper defense line if you can accept a light downtime. So defense in depth means layer upon layer of controls to address the same issue. Zero trust means not providing access that is not required. Zero trust by the name says, I don't trust anything. Nothing is trusted. It is mostly applicable in access management. With zero trust, you use what the security domain calls least privilege. This is a concept of least privilege. For example, if you have a system that has, for example, an approver, somebody who creates accounts, approves accounts, transmits accounts, operates accounts, will you give all the various accesses to the same person? It may be necessary, yes, but from the onset, what is the level of access you give to a new person, for example, who is joining the department? Zero. No access is always the best. This implies you don't trust. Now, when you are giving an access to somebody, you give him just what he needs for the job. And if he needs to change or add another access, you remove the one he doesn't need. Don't trust that he may not exploit it. No. Humans are unpredictable. That's why they are called the weakest link in security. So instead of trusting that the person I'm granting access to is my twin brother and he will not let me down, I will not grant him the access and make sure that he has just what I will grant him so that he doesn't let me down, because I don't trust that he will not let me down. So these are the two different concepts. Zero trust is more about access management. Defense in depth is more about control management.
All right. Thank you. I hope, Ruth, I hope you can clearly cut out the difference between defense in depth and zero trust. So Doriana has another question. when it comes to security, can the panelists tell us what kind of tool we can use to simplify our job as a security guy of an organization and reach the level of security that will make us feel safe? A tool we can use to simplify our job or to make our job easier, I guess so. Well, I don't know. The floor is yours, guys. Enoch, Maurice, Nathaniel. So is there a tool to make his job easier?
That's a tricky question.
Does he want, indeed, it's a very tricky question. Is he focusing on security or simplicity? because our focus here is not to make anything simple. Our security guys are supposed to make things difficult for the hackers the bad guys not to get access. But I think what he or she is trying to say is that he or she needs a tool that is like enterprise resource planning tool, one in all, that he can use to manage its endpoint and all that. Are we allowed to market any vendor here? If we are allowed, we can mention brands. Does it come with any?
No, there's no sanction to that.
Okay.
There's no sanction to that.
Well. Again, it comes with your budget. No tool is 100% secure or will make your job simple. Like we are all mentioning, you should not have the habit of always investing in the latest on the fanciful tools that will raise your budget up. Of course, security is expensive, we know, but you shouldn't be in the habit of always looking for that shortcut. And the mindset of making it simple, I need to psych him or her that you need to make the business flow and interoperability seamless, not simple. Because the moment as a security person, you have the mindset of simplicity, you have already lost your path in the career of a cybersecurity person. So that I want to psych him. Now, coming to the answer, there are a lot of tools depending on your budget. Microsoft have the M365 Super. It checks your cloud. It has the CASB accessibility. We have the Sentinel, which is at the SIM. We have McAfee SIM. We have Qualys MDR. That's the endpoint detection tool. A lot in the market. So look at your budget. Look at your business. Do your business analysis, as Eugene mentioned and Maurice mentioned, and then be able to come out with a vendor that can actually give you that simplicity in quote that you prefer. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I guess the question was probably addressed to Doriana. Doriana, I hope that was clear. So the third question we have is coming from Give. To an organization who hires people with no working experience and they end up processing solutions which are not beneficial to the companies. What advice are you giving them? Briefly. Anyone can take the floor.
Can I take it?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So advice I always give to clients each time I'm consulting is that as a business, the moment you decide to hire cheap labor, quote unquote, people who don't have skills, now have one person in every unit or department that is a subject matter expert or that's a senior most person. Okay, so this is the strategy to cut budget and to maintain efficiency, as is mentioned, to clients or design services or product to client that will worth value for money. Have a senior guy in every unit or an experienced hands-on person who knows the job just like that in every unit. Then you can have the luxury of employing or recruiting people with zero or minimum work experience. Why? You are one, giving them the opportunity to learn on the job. Two, you are cutting costs. But if you want to not hire consultants like us to come and man or give advisory services whilst we train people for you to man your business in 1 year or 6 months time, and you want to go straight forward with hiring people fresh from school, you have a lot of problems. You have a lot of problems, trust me. So my advice, this is a technical and free advice you are giving to all. before you embark on that spree of hiring, I'm summarizing, hiring less experienced staff, make sure you have a consultant or hands-on person or an experienced staff in that unit for which you are employing, or that people with that skill or less skill, so that they can train them. The idea is to train them to transition or hand over the baton to them so that they can man the business. By so doing, in a year or two, one, you are removing the issue of unemployment as a company, you are removing the issue of less experience, you are giving opportunity to fresh graduates. But if you don't want to do that and want to, from the scratch, put a whole department full of people with less, trust me, the hackers will enjoy working with you.
I love that. The hackers will enjoy. Well, I hope Shinsa got that right, or unless Nathaniel has something to add to it before we go to the next question.
I would add that in such a case, you need to make sure that your requirements are set right and you have clear objectives so that the newbies will understand what to deliver. You don't entrust all the thinking to them and expect good results.
Okay. Thank you for that straight one. So we have another question coming from one of the social media platforms that says, hello, panelists. And first of all, I love you guys. All right. The panelists definitely love you back. All right. So thank you for your exchanges and your availability. I would like to ask you this. I was in a security project and the speakers were talking about residual risk assessment when no risk assessment had yet been done. I didn't quite understand what he was referring to. So my question is this: when do we talk about residual risk, and what other type of risk exists in the life cycle of a project?
Okay, I'll just
Anyone
take that
can
up
take it
real quick.
Right.
I'll take it up real quick. First of all, risk. This question is a huge question. To summarize everything, first, you cannot have residual risk when risk assessment has not been done. Let's face the fact. We're talking about residue. There's no residue without principal operation. So that's a mistake many people do, because many people run a guess on the assessment and then run a guess on the treatment. So this is the process. You identify the risk, then you assess the risk, then you choose a risk treatment, and then you assess what is left after treating the risk. So you cannot just assess what is left after treating the risk when you have not even assessed what to treat. So probably in this particular situation, there is, I have a nudge to say that you may have been seeing the last part of the risk treatment process. So some work might have been done before presenting this data to you. So what you're seeing is just the outcome of a risk management process. Now, in a project, there are several risks that may come up. However, risks in project only come as per the specific project. It is very difficult to see what type of risk specific to a project may arise. But if we're talking about project management, the biggest risk is what we would call hope creep, feature creep. These are things that lag a project. They pull a project behind and delay it from being delivered or causes it to be delivered with over expenses. So it leads to budget creep too, as well as scope creep. These are the main kind of risks that may appear in a project as a whole. But when it comes to specifics of the technicalities of a project, the risks will differ depending on the type of project. I hope I made some sense on the question.
Sure, you did. You did. I guess the person who asked the question got something from this or got a lot from it. So actually, we are about to drop our mics. But before we drop our mics, there is this particular one that comes up. When do you have to consider yourself secure as a company? when do you hit your hand on the chest and say, you are secure? Or when do you have to consider yourself secure as a company? Anyone can take
I'd just
lead.
like to say something about that real quick.
Yes.
Actually, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are only two things. It's either you've been attacked or you're not yet aware that you have been attacked.
I like that. Mm-hmm.
It may not sound very, I would say, friendly to many people, but yes, technically, security is an aspect that keeps you on your toes. And there is no time, let's be realistic, there is no time you will ever think you can consider yourself secure. For the moment that you think you're secure and you want to take a break would be the moment they will send you to the skies running for protection.
Wow. So it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Thank you, Nathaniel. Mr. Enoch, I don't know, when do you think a company should say, you're good, you're secure now? When?
I wish there could be a time like that a company can say that. But trust me, no, you can never ever say that, because one of the psychology of the adversary or people who are looking to defame our business in terms of business disruption is that there's no price for failure. They can try as multiple times as they can. So as we are sitting here having this conference, they're also having conferences elsewhere that they are planning on different attack vectors. So the moment you sleep, the moment you sleep, you have widened your attack surface. And I keep saying the hackers will enjoy working with you very much. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Thank you for that. Hackers will enjoy working with you. That's so powerful. Thank you very much. We had Enoch, we had Maurice. Maurice had he had an emergency. He just wrote to me and he had to escape through the tiny door, through the back door. We had Nathaniel. So I mean, it's been a great pleasure hosting you, and believe me, Africa is getting to that level where we'll start to be measured or be used as a yardstick to a lot of countries too. Africa is evolving, and we have it out there on the news. It's going big. It's going big, and with platforms like this, having great minds from Ghana, we'll be having people from all over the world. You have Enoch coming from Ghana. You have Nathaniel. Nathaniel's flight just landed today. I don't even know how he found himself here. And Maurice has been doing so powerfully. I mean, guys, it's actually something we really like to appreciate. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for sharing everything you shared. I mean, we are so amazed and we are grateful about that. So I don't know if my presenter Audrey is here to actually shut down the session for today.